Hello, my name is Trent Walker. Today I'm going to be sharing a Burmese manuscript from the Royal Ontario Museum. This particular manuscript is a Burmese Kammavācā manuscript. Kammavācā here means words for ritual. That is a literal script of who is supposed to say what, when, or do what, when in the ritual for monastic ordination conducted in Pali, the sacred language of Theravada Buddhism in mainland Southeast Asia. This particular example is not made from palm leaf, it's not made from paper, it's not made from other much more commonly used materials, but is actually made from cloth that's been stiffened through successive layers of clay and lacquer, and then gilded and elaborately ornamented. Perhaps a cloth of the king or a high-ranking monk was used in this case. So when we look at images of a typical ordination ceremony, it's divided into different stages here. First, the portion of lower ordination, where the layperson here dressed in white first becomes a novice monk or samanera through the bapadya, or the going forth ritual of lower ordination. And then begins to prepare for the rite of higher ordination. And this is really where the manuscript begins, providing a kind of script, and a script not in the sense of a writing system, but kind of like a play that stipulates what each actor is supposed to say, what they're supposed to do, and when. And in this case, we have the ordinand, the monk who is in the process of becoming a fully ordained monk, or bhikkhu on the left, his hands pressed together in prayer, answering questions in Pali, or sometimes repeating back certain phrases in Pali. That is preceptor, the monk with glasses on the right, is saying to him. And this is all entirely memorized between the two of them. Nobody here is looking at a manuscript. And then there's an elaborate series of bows and prostrations and chants and acts of putting on the robe that are connected to this process of ordination, that are again stipulated in the manuscript. When we look at how some of these rites are conducted today, again we see the monk who is in the process of becoming a fully ordained monk, here labeled as monk A on the left, his hands pressed together in prayer, his preceptor, who we saw just before, holding the fan and reciting some of the key texts and asking questions to the ordinand that he is again expected to answer in Pali. And this is all going back and forth with the understanding that it is absolutely imperative that the recitation of the script of the Kammavācā rite is flawless, both in terms of what is said and its pronunciation. And so there is often a third monk, in this case labeled as monk C, who is tasked with checking the accuracy of the ritual to make sure that everything goes right, so that the ordination is legally valid according to Buddhist law. Here, circled in blue, is the particular book that this monk is following along to check to make sure that everything is being done properly. And this is the function of the Kammavācā manuscript, that is to be able to function as an object that is given within the particular ritual economy of a family supporting monastic ordination, offering a more elaborate and therefore more expensive object as part of that, as a way of honoring the teachings of the Buddha, also having a particular practical purpose to check during the ordination ritual itself, is it being conducted exactly as it should be according to the text? Within the Burmese manuscript tradition, we see a few examples of ordinations being depicted in illustrated form as well. This is an example of a leporello, or a Burmese parabike manuscript that depicts ordination in Burma. One of the Buddha's earliest disciples, named Yasa, seeks ordination, depicted here on the left as the layperson in white in front of the larger group. And then on the picture on the right, he's the monk up on the platform with Buddha after receiving monastic ordination. And again, we see this process being depicted in illustrated form, but curiously, never in the Kammavācā manuscripts themselves, which usually have either stylized or abstract designs or narrative scenes from the life of the Buddha or his various past lives, or Jataka narratives. Everything that I've been contextualizing so far about this manuscript has been quite focused on the male monastic perspective, and that's part of the bias of the material and the art historical record, as well as reflecting a widespread belief within Theravada ecclesiastical authorities that women's ordination has not been valid since the nuns' order died out 800 or 900 years ago. However, other Buddhists today, including Theravada Buddhists, hold that women's ordination is valid and continues, and that nuns' ordination would proceed along similar procedures as well, even though it does not appear that Kammavācā manuscripts of this type were ever produced for nuns' ordination. But when we look at some of the artistic depictions of ordination. This is an example from Cambodia in the early 1980s. We see some representations of women's ordination. This is a depiction on cloth of the Buddha's stepmother, Mahapajapati Gautami, offering monastic robes to the Buddha. And this is a story that's part of a larger series of exchanges between the Buddha's stepmother, who really raises him after his mother passes away 7 days after he was born, and eventually becomes the first woman to request ordination as a nun from the Buddha. And so this is part of a series of depictions of that moment of Mahapajapati's Gautami's requesting of ordination and eventually receiving full ordination as a nun or bhikkhuni from the Buddha, leading to the establishment of this nun's order. So I encourage you to visit the Hidden Stories digital exhibit to learn more. Thank you.